paint names suggested by an AI algorithm include Clardic Fug, Caring Tan, Grassbat, Stanky Bean, and Turdley.
Daddy wasn't finding a bow wow. Daddy wasn't finding a bow wow. I love my little cat. I'm very fond of that. I'd rather have a big bow wow 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 wow. Daddy
Hello,
wasn't
and
finding
welcome
a
to the
bow
Motriverse. I'm Linette.
And I'm Skip.
Did you like that one?
Yeah, that was pretty cool.
I know how you feel about AI.
Yeah.
It made me laugh so much when I found this fact, and I had it on a list of facts for a previous episode, and I was like, oh, I got to start with this one.
There
Yeah,
you go.
so the research into AI and Chat GPT is ongoing, of course, and some of it is really good,
Hmm.
as far as sentence formatting and things like that, but some of it just is just so funny. I guess so what this was a researcher. She was a research scientist. Her name was Janelle Shane.
Hmm.
And she was kind of just having fun playing with AI chatbots. She read an article about AI generated cookbook recipes, which I don't know if you've ever seen those. They're really funny. Like you
No,
could tell a chatbot to write you a recipe, and it's absolutely ridiculous.
oh, okay.
Yeah. Um, and she decided to create some paint names. So names for paint colors, because paint colors, there's a million of them out there.
Yep.
And so she found some other ones. Some more examples are Herky Rose, Rose Hork, Horrible Gray, not horrible, but Horble Gray,
Uh,
Burple Simp, and Bimpus Poop.
let's get some of that Bimpus poop. Okay.
I want my walls to be
Yeah.
Bimpus Poop.
Yeah.
I would, like, honestly, I would literally, I don't care what the color is. If I went through a list of AI generated paint colors and one of them just made me laugh, I would put that on my walls. Kind of like, how like when you buy a bottle of wine, I haven't bought a bottle of wine in a long time.
Yep.
But you buy a bottle of wine and you don't really know, you haven't tasted it before. So you're like, well, that label is nice.
Hmm. Hmm.
The label looks interesting, so I'll get it. It's probably good.
Wow.
So, so folks, again, we're here with the randomness. I think I really like how we're doing this. I think we could go on with this randomness pretty much forever. And I think what I was thinking was that we would sort of sprinkle in a single interest story every now and then, but
Right.
for the most part, we could be random like this because it's a lot of fun. I don't know if you're having as much fun as I am, but I am having
Yeah,
fun.
it's kind of cool. I'm finding interesting stuff to talk about, and you can expand upon it. I was reading that at one point in the 1950s, the U.S. Air Force considered launching a nuclear missile at the moon
Hmm.
as a show of superiority, to the Russians. Probably the
Right,
blast would have likely been visible on Earth. I mean, seriously, folks,
right.
let's go nuke the moon. Okay.
Let's not manifest that idea for anybody who might be listening, because I'm sure that would be something people would do now too. That's a good idea. And do
Yeah,
the different colors like fireworks for the explosion.
yeah, just bizarre. Well, it's just like that story we had, which this. I think one time we talked about that with the CIA
Hmm.
that would drop condoms into Russian territory, made in USA, and it said Magnum or something like that, and it was.
That's a very American thing to do, even back
Yeah,
then.
yeah. Whether they did it or not, I don't know, but they certainly, can you imagine them sitting around talking about, hey, listen, why don't we do this? You know, uh,
Yeah, I'd really like to be a fly on the wall for some of those sort of, I picture them like the writer's table at like a sitcom where it's
yep,
a bunch of like people in around a table just coming up with the most ridiculous shit and then going, yeah, that works. Yeah, that works.
yep, yep, yep. Well, it's funny. that I was talking yesterday, and I remember this talk about the Russians and the United States, whether they fear us or not. And one thing that happened when Reagan was president, and I think a lot of what happened with the Russians when Reagan was president was really due to the fact that they believed in Nostradamus's predictions.
Hmm.
But at one point, Reagan was touring a nuclear missile facility, and he said, and for some reason, somebody had a video recording it at the time. He says, "Listen, if I push this button, would it go to Russia?"
Yeah,
Uh,
I read about that. It was
yes,
like a
and that's a
hot,
true story.
yeah, it was like a
Uh,
hot mic moment. Yeah.
yeah, it's a hot mic movement, and I always wondered if Russian leadership heard that and says, "Holy crap,
Yeah.
this guy is crazy," and it had changed their philosophy about fearing America. That fear them even more when they realize they get this old guy who Nostradamus predicted that there would be an elderly president who would end the world. So yeah, it's sort of interesting. All those things that these hot mic things, you just never know what they would say with the mics off. That ended up being, if someone heard it, they'd be shocked. It's like this senator recently when they were talking about Medicaid and everything, and they're saying all these people are going to die, and she said, "You know what? We're all going to die." I go, "Seriously?"
Well, that was like the one
like,
guy I heard talking about how a lot of children of impoverished families, it would actually
mhm.
be better if they died because there would be less of a burden on Medicaid.
Yep, yep, yep.
And they say those things out loud now. This is the
Yes,
thing.
I know. It's a little fact. This has got to be weird for the people on the International Space Station
Oh yeah.
that the sun rises and sets around 15 times a day at
Yeah.
the International Space Station. It orbits around the Earth once every 90 minutes or so. So they see the sun on the horizon around 15 times a day.
Yeah,
That's
I
got to,
think yeah, isn't that cool? I think that
yeah.
was happening for astronauts when they were on like, the shuttles and on like the Gemini space missions too.
Yeah.
Um,
That's, that's cool stuff. Not cool enough for me to want to go to space, but that's
yeah. Yeah, no, I don't no, I can't even keep my equilibrium when I'm standing on the ground.
yeah.
I would just be just instant vomit the whole time. I wouldn't enjoy
Mm.
myself very much at all. But yeah.
Oh,
I see a lot of space content in my house, because Richard is super interested in all things space,
oh
and
yeah.
he knows just about everything there is to know about NASA and everything there is to know about all of the, pretty much the space program. Just you
Mm.
just ask him anything about the space program and he knows because we've watched so many documentaries about it and like multiple various perspectives on the same subject. Like I can't tell you how many times I've seen documentaries on Apollo 11 and 13.
Yeah.
Like those usually end up being the ones.
Yeah, I mean, to me, it's always fascinating stuff. But some folks really can get into it, and you marvel at the technology. And I marvel, and certainly recently, in the amount of times that they're sending rockets up. But more than that, that they're able to bring the booster. Every time they bring that booster down and they hit the target, it
Yeah,
just I can't stop being amazed by it. It's
it
just
is pretty cool. And that's the
yeah,
reason they can do so many because you can reuse the boosters,
right, exactly.
which is what they were kind of going with the shuttle
Mhm.
program.
Yep, yep.
Uh, but it just ended up being just a huge and like there's a lot of political stuff involved in the space program that
Hmm.
that was kind of all over the place
Yep,
and that was kind of dark and things like that. So that was unfortunate. And there still is,
yep.
obviously, now with, SpaceX and all that stuff. But it still is, the other people who are working there, I'm still fascinated with their knowledge and the things they can do.
And I think it should be emphasized that so much that we take for granted nowadays everything from cell phones to the watches that we wear, we're really products of the space program.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's not useless. I mean, there was a lot of talk while the shuttle program was going on. I watched a recent documentary and I never experienced that as a kid because when I was a kid, it was just like, yeah, this is important, like for
Mhm.
science.
Yep.
But really, they didn't actually have an aim. I mean, they were mostly just trying to be known as somebody who could do it because they had like the International Space Station and they're like, cool. And they said, well, we're going to have the shuttle to bring things to the International Space Station. And they're like,
Mhm.
okay, so what's the International Space Station for? Oh, it's so that you can bring the shuttle up.
Yeah. Yeah, and then it's like everything else, though. Now they find, reasons for it being there with experiments and stuff like that.
Yeah, they're actually doing science now.
Yeah, they're doing stuff. And it's crazy that nowadays it's becoming commercial as opposed to it was really a government program. And when it comes down to the space race itself, like for example, going to the moon, it was really tasked by John F. Kennedy to
Hmm.
say we will be on the moon by the end of the '60s. And so the impetus to get the space program moving was that. And
As a
then
Cold
when
War.
they start seeing the benefits, like I was just talking about, that things get developed so they could go to the moon, or they could before the space station, so they could go there. They had to miniaturize things, or had to come up with different ways to support life. And even nowadays, and even to the spacesuits that the astronauts wear when they're flying up to the
Right.
space station, they just seem like they're really sleek. It's not
Oh,
like
yeah.
the cumbersome things that they used to wear. So,
Oh, yeah. And I mean, all the studies that they're doing on the human body and the effects
mhm,
of weightlessness, but also radiation and things like that,
mhm.
they're learning a lot about that. So there's
Oh
definitely
yeah.
research that goes on now. It's just funny that that was, you kind of think that that wasn't the original impetus, but now at least it's doing something. But what's more fascinating, when I was a kid, I was more fascinated with the shuttles because you could see people going up.
Yeah.
But what's much more fascinating is the Voyager probes
Mhm.
that are, by the way, still out there.
Yep.
Voyager
Mm.
1 and 2 are in interstellar space right now,
Right.
which is really cool. They've left. They're
Right.
not in the neighborhood anymore, and they're
Yeah.
still sending back signals. It's very, very cool. And we've
Yep.
discovered
Yep.
so many planets. Like
Yeah.
it's very neat.
Yep.
And you can go, there's like a website where you can go and it tells you the exact it tells you the coordinates of where the Voyager probes are
Mhm.
and it also tells you like how long the signal takes to get back to us and what the distance is and what they're seeing and where they're located. It's very cool. I like it a
Yep.
lot. But yeah. Yeah, space is cool.
Yeah. Listen, true or false?
Hmm.
The slang term hooker, referring to a prostitute, originated with the Civil War general Joseph Hooker.
I bet that's like I bet that's like one of the common arguments, but I bet it isn't true.
That's right. It's false. It's a
Yeah.
popular rumor. Uh,
Yeah.
but General Hooker kept his men so well supplied with prostitutes that his men were credited with coining the term. However, linguists have found that evidence that the word was used well before General Hooker's time.
Oh my goodness. And of course we don't use that word anymore. And we don't actually say prostitute as much anymore either.
No,
It's sex
that's right.
worker, but yeah.
Yeah.
Uh but
Hey, hey, listen, I think we said this before. True or false? It was at one point legal to use the U.S. Postal Service to send children through the mail.
yes, it was. Yes.
Yeah, remember?
I'm
All of a sudden, when I saw it, I said, I think we talked about this before.
I've seen pictures of the kids. Like
Yeah.
and they really have you seen those pictures?
No, no, yeah.
There's if you Google it, there's like a picture of this very like sad looking child sitting in a mailbag and the postal worker's he's like, I don't want to go in the mailbag. Like
Isn't
literally.
there like a picture online which there was some question whether it was true or false, where they had this woman sitting on a porch and she had her kids all
Yeah.
around us, and she had a sign, "Children for sale."
Children for
Um,
sale. Yeah.
there was some people disputed whether that was true or not, but
Yes, I didn't know. It says it's been speculated that the photo was staged,
mhm.
but the story was true.
Oh,
And this is really sad. All of the children, including the child that she was pregnant with at the time, were sold.
well,
All of the kids in the photo and the woman was pregnant. She did sell all of her children.
how about that, sport fan?
Yeah, but I guess the speculation is that she staged the photo so that, maybe she would garner some kind of sympathy or story or maybe money from whoever was taking the photo,
Yeah, and
something like
then
that.
yeah, and then perhaps not sell the children. Yeah, so
Yeah, isn't that awful? And
yeah, pretty much. Yeah, so.
yeah, and oh my goodness, if you're interested in learning more about that story, there's a wealth of information online. Including one of the men who was one of the children.
Mhm.
He was adopted when he was about 5. So you can read all of their little stories. I guess they've still follow, and that was from 1948, by the way, Chicago.
Okay. Oh, yeah. So year I was born.
Yeah, that's crazy. That's just
Yeah,
crazy
pretty
stuff.
much. Pretty much.
I can't imagine what somebody must go through in order to think that that's an option. But
Yeah, going random like crazy.
yeah.
Was it you that was talking about Maria Curie? Uh,
Oh, Marie Curie. Yeah,
yeah, her belongings was so irradiated that nearly 100 years after her death, they are still stored in lead-lined boxes,
they
and
are.
they will
Yeah.
continue to be radioactive for another 1,500 years.
Yes, and including like her casket is lead
Mhm.
lined and her notes are radioactive. You
Right.
can see them, but you can't get close to them.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's pretty horrible. And I mean, I don't know, just imagine what somebody did in the name of science. She actually knew that it was going to do that to her.
Yeah. Well,
You
that
know?
yes, that's in what went forward with the experiments, even knowing that that was true.
Yeah, because she knew it was
Yeah.
important.
Right.
And her husband too, although he died early. He was actually run over by a vehicle. It wasn't a car, obviously. It was like a horse and buggy.
Oh, okay. All right.
But yeah, he died in a horse and buggy accident, which is awful. But I think he was also exposed almost as much as she was to radiation. It's pretty
Yeah.
dark.
Pretty dark. Listen, let's lighten that up a little bit.
Yes.
It shouldn't come as a surprise that Joseph Brahma, the man who invented the flush toilet, also invented the beer tap. Hey, that man knew how to move fluids.
Oh my gosh. Not a beer drinker, but I can imagine you have to use a toilet a lot when you drink a lot of beer. So,
Yep, yep, yeah. So it all ties in together.
right, right.
So I was talking to one of my neighbors the other day. We were talking about westerns and something, and this sort of came up. It sort of tied in for me that the true or false,
Hmm.
the same chemical compound that's used to make deadly mustard gas in World War I
Mhm.
is used to create the very first chemotherapy treatments.
Oh.
Yeah. And another fact, which ties into this Western thing, Walter Brennan,
Hmm.
okay? Walter Brennan was born, he was born in Lynn, Massachusetts. I didn't even know that.
There you go.
And while working as a bank clerk, he enlisted in the Army in 101st Field Artillery Regiment. And while he was in the field, he suffered an injury. His gas mask had a leak, and he ended up inhaling mustard gas,
Mm.
and that gave him his trademark voice.
Oh, right.
Yeah, and that's where so the high pitched voice, and that gave him. There was some more interesting stuff about him. He had a lot of the movies you saw him that he looked quite old, like he had no teeth.
Yeah.
Well, when he was young, as he was a stunt guy, and during one of the stunts, he got kicked in the mouth, and all his teeth got knocked out.
Wow.
And he would alternately wear the false teeth or take them out, depending on his role. Because when he took the teeth out, he looked about 40 years older. Just a little
Yeah.
The Walter Brennan thing. The thing, in spite of the mustard gas thing, the two things were interesting to me. One, he was born in Lynn, Massachusetts, which, that was fascinating to me, anyways, being from Massachusetts.
Yeah.
Um, and then how he got his voice, which I knew that.
Right.
I think you and I might have talked about that before.
Yeah, it looks like his vocal cords got injured by the mustard
Yes,
gas.
by the mustard gas. Yes. No, that's why they were the gas mask. Is a
Yeah.
matter of fact, they still drill for that. When I was going through basic training, I had to go through a room with the gas mask on.
Yeah.
Uh, they said they didn't have any gas in the room, so well, I have to
Okay.
believe that's true. But it was just an exercise. So
Yeah. I listen, I know somebody who went to the police academy and they did have gas in the room.
yeah,
Yeah, and they
yeah.
had to like do the thing that you see sometimes when you're watching like basic training where they have to take the mask off and say like
Mhm.
their name, rank, and serial number really quickly with the
Mhm.
mask off while the gas is like burning their eyes and
Phone,
stuff.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah. I don't know what that's a test for, I guess, so that you can identify yourself or speak while you're still,
Well, it's so
I don't know.
that's to follow orders.
To
So
well, that makes sense. Everything is to
yeah,
follow orders.
yeah.
Yeah,
You notice
and
the sarcasm to that
yeah,
part of it.
exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, when you were mentioning Walter Brennan, not only was he born in Lynn, he lived in Swampscott.
Yeah. Next to Swampscott. Yeah. Right.
Yeah, no, his parents his family's home was in Swampscott.
In Swampscott. Yeah.
So
Okay.
Lynn was the hospital that was right there,
Right.
right? It was
Right.
probably Union. It was probably Union Hospital, which is some of my
Oh,
friends
okay.
worked there. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't, I they might have said what hospital it was. I didn't note it down though. So
Oh, Wikipedia doesn't, but I bet. Yeah, that's so funny.
James Bond.
Oh, yes.
There was always this thing about, shaken, not stirred. And basically, it wasn't even used in any of his books. And the first one that did it was Sean Connery, first one that said it. And
Hmm.
some purists will say that you don't
Yes,
shake the martini anyways, because it puts too much air in it and weakens it.
I heard
But
that. Yeah.
yeah, James Bond, as far as drinking, his favorite drink was whiskeys. Of the 317 drinks, 101 of them are whiskeys or bourbon, and vodka martini, only 19 times.
Well, and that
It,
makes sense.
yeah.
If you think about the difference between the time that the books were written and the
Mhm.
time that the films came out
Yep.
during the Cold War, there wasn't a whole lot of vodka being
Yeah.
enjoyed by people who weren't in Russia
Yep.
for
That's
obvious
probably
reasons.
true.
Yeah, because vodka was very much a Russian drink, and anything associated with Russia during the Cold War probably
Yeah.
not a good idea to sort of emphasize. And so, and because of that, I mean, vodka wasn't something a lot of people drank
Yeah.
until much later. So
Yeah.
it wasn't a popular drink.
It's kind of it surprised me in a way. I don't think it was in reading the James Bond books. I don't think I recall that part of the drinking. I think it was more emphasized in the movies. Hey, remember we did a the whole fairy tales thing,
Yes.
and one little factoid that I ran into, which surprised the heck out of me, and you might know this, so correct me if you do.
Hmm.
But the Cinderella slippers, what they were
Right.
made of in the original, in one version, it was done by Charles Perrault. Did you know what
Yes.
that was?
Yeah, they think it might have been fur,
Yeah, squirrel
instead of
fur.
glass.
Yeah,
Yes.
squirrel fur. Yeah.
And the reason for that is a translation error, they
Yep.
think.
Exactly.
Yes.
Yep, yep. And it's interesting, it's just I think it was like they figured that when he wrote it, he misheard the word
Hmm.
there, which is squirrel fur,
Yes.
and then he updated it to very, which is glass.
Yeah.
It seems interesting. I don't think we brought that up when we were doing it. It would have been an interesting thing
We,
to bring up.
yeah, I don't remember. We may have,
Yeah,
but the French language has a lot of similar words. And so there's a lot. I don't know if you've ever seen it. You may not have, but we were watching some of these videos. You could create a sentence in French so that sounds everything sounds the same, it just
Uh-huh.
specifically with French. So this sentence, which translates to the green worm goes to the green glass, is le ver vert va vers le ver vert. Because the
Okay.
words, yeah. So the word ver worm, vert green,
Uh-huh.
ver goes va, vers towards, and verre is glass. So yeah, le verre va vers le verre. And that's there's a bunch of examples of that in French. It's very funny.
Oh, okay. All right. Speaking of French and French things, or at least we think it's French things,
Yeah.
is who invented champagne? Did you know who invented champagne?
Wasn't it a monk?
Okay. You'd love this. It was invented by the British.
Oh, was it?
The English, yeah, the English liked fizzy wine.
Oh, of course they
And
did.
they imported green flat wine from Champagne
Huh.
and added sugar and molasses to move the fermenting process up. And they produced champagne.
Oh, I bet the French hate that because
Oh,
they
yeah. Hell yeah. And you know what really pisses the French off? There's a legal loophole
right,
that allows Americans to call their sparkling wines, champagne.
right.
And that happened because when sometime there was peace agreements, and part of the peace agreements was that the French would keep the name Champagne for their wine, but the Americans signed a separate agreement with the Germans and allowed them to freely sell their wines, their fizzy sparkling wines, as champagne.
Wow.
See, I knew you'd like the British part of it. That's
Yeah.
why.
Yeah, the British, yeah. Well, the Brits, they'll do anything to get one over on France.
Oh yeah, yeah, that's it. Yeah.
France or Germany, either one.
Yeah,
It's like they're two. Yeah,
it's just funny. When I saw that, I said, "Oh yeah, she's gonna like that one."
I do.
So,
Yeah. I have one that starts in France, actually.
okay,
My fact starts in France, so we can go with that.
sure, go.
Um,
Now that we're friends.
yes,
Okay,
now that we're, yeah, La Francais.
yeah.
Uh, France has short story vending machines. So vending machines that dispense short
Short
stories.
stories. Oh,
They also have one in LA. And this got me on a little kick about vending machines. So
oh,
I
okay.
have a whole bunch of little facts about vending machines. And of course, while we're still in France, can you guess the other thing that they might have in Paris specifically in a vending machine?
I hate to guess, but go ahead. Yeah, no, I can't. No,
No. They have a baguette vending machine in Paris.
a baguette.
Baguettes. It could have been anything. It could have been croissant. It could have been
Yeah, I was thinking croissant,
coffee.
but I wasn't sure I wanted to go that way.
Yeah, yeah. So I found a list of some other cool vending machines around the world.
Hmm.
In Italy, they have
Hmm.
cheese vending machines.
Well, see, that's easy enough to do. You just
Oh
scrape
yeah,
off the mold.
put some cheese.
Anyways, go ahead.
uh
Sorry.
there there is in Montana, which should be surprising to no one. There's a live bait vending machine in Montana.
Okay.
So you don't even have to go into that little rickety store with
Hmm.
the 95-year-old guy to get your live bait. You can just
Ah,
get it from
okay.
a vending machine. And we'll get into this country when I get to the end, but there is an underwear vending machine in Japan,
Oh,
which
okay.
should not surprise you. Japan is big on vending machines, and I'll talk about that in a minute.
Yeah.
In Seattle, another unsurprising one, there is a medical marijuana machine. So you don't even have to
Okay.
go in there. You don't even have to go in there and have a fake consultation and say like you have, TMJ.
Yeah. There you go.
Yeah, just put your money in and press a button. Philadelphia has a hair extension vending machine.
That's
uh,
funny.
and this happens a lot of countries, and actually many countries have these, and I think we probably do here a couple, but in Istanbul in particular, if you put like used bottles, like for
Hmm.
recycling purpose, into a vending machine, it'll dispense dog food for stray dogs.
Hmm. Hmm.
That's kind of nice, like for the dogs. They also have that in Serbia, so that a lot of cities in those areas that have like a lot of stray dogs, you could feed the stray dogs and also recycle at the same time, which is kind of cool. Sydney, Australia has a sunscreen vending machine, not too
Okay.
surprising.
Hmm.
In Zurich, And I I think this is in other places, but in Zurich, there's a vending machine at a cemetery.
And okay, so what would be the flowers or something?
Yeah, so it has like candles and like little
Okay,
lanterns and things
okay.
like that maybe
Stuffed
little,
animals and
yeah,
whatever.
yeah,
Yeah,
like
yeah.
little things that you'd want to put by the graves.
Okay.
Um, Malaysia and China have succulent vending machines, which I would love.
Hmm.
And this one I liked. It's in a village in Czechia. They have a potato vending machine called the Potato Mat.
The potato man.
Potato
Oh,
Mat. I would go to that.
yeah.
Um, there's this one I couldn't find where it was, but it's really cool. It's a bottled water vending machine, but it has it organizes the water in rows with different temperature increments.
Oh, okay.
So, like, I mean, Richard and I argue about what the right temperature for water is. I can't
Hmm.
drink water unless it's ice cold. It's
Right.
disgusting if it's not cold. And he likes warm water
That's a
because,
British thing, by the way.
oh, is he British now?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So he's British. It's
He's
okay.
British now. I'll have to tell him that. I mean, I just call him a monster for drinking warm water. It's like weird, some kind of animal. But yeah. Um, okay, so Japan. These are just some of the examples. And just a little fun fact, there are more vending machines in Japan than there are people in New Zealand. So just like I
Wow.
mean, there's also more sheep in New Zealand than there are people, but that's okay. So, specifically in Japan, they have one of the highest concentrations of vending machines in the world. So, roughly one for every 23 people.
Vending machines.
Vending
Yeah.
machines for every
Hmm.
one for every 23 people. They
Hmm.
have everything in vending machines, but some of the examples are bananas, cake, coffee drinks, which is,
Hmm. Okay.
they have various alcohol ones. So like mostly in the cities like Tokyo and stuff
Hmm. Yeah.
that they lock up and they're locked until a certain time of night. The
Oh,
alcohol
okay.
ones. Yeah, they're on like a timer for the alcohol ones. They have ramen. You can get all kinds of meals out of your vending machines in Japan. Like you in the middle of a park, there'd just be like some nice soup, or
Hmm.
a sandwich and a drink. They have something called bug snacks, which are like snacks made of bugs. And then the other one, which I thought was cool, is a hunko seal. So a seal, like how we used to use in like European cultures, we used to use wax seals to
Hmm. Yep.
seal
Hmm.
letters and correspondence.
Yep.
They still do that in Japan, and it's like you have one custom made with your name. And it's
Hmm.
very popular to use in Japan as a signature for important documents and things like that. And
Yeah.
you can have one made in a vending machine in a lot of the cities in Japan. It's kind of like over here we have kind of things like that. You can make customized things, but mostly it's like dog tags, you know.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah. Hmm.
I know there's a vending machine for making keys at Walmart.
Well, yeah. Yeah. That I get. I've seen that. When I was stationed in Colorado, and I was in a NCO barracks, and we had a beer machine. It had Coors Light, Michelob, not Michelob, Miller Lite. You
Oh
know,
yeah.
yeah, yeah. Okay, go ahead, keep
That's
going. I
pretty
just want to
cool.
throw that in.
Oh
Yeah,
no, that was my last one, but that's interesting because
yeah,
trying to think of all the different kinds of vending machines. Oh, I had a question for you actually.
sure.
So, did they have any automats in Boston?
I think they had one in near the Boston Garden.
Oh, okay. So
There
near like
was
the
a
train station and stuff?
yeah, near the train station. Well, actually, I think across the street from the entrance to the Boston Garden, there was one, and it was actually a company or restaurant that had popularized vending machines in New York, and
Yeah.
they had they opened a place there. I want to say I want to say Waldorf, but I'm probably wrong at that. But Yeah, there was one that was across from the Boston Garden. I do remember that.
That's really cool because
Yeah.
when I was a kid, my
Hmm.
point of reference for that was the film Kramer versus Kramer.
Hmm.
And there's a scene where he's talking to his kid and
Yeah.
he says, "Well, back when I was a kid, they didn't even have vending machines. They had this thing called an automat." And I was like, what's an automat? And he explained what it was. And I was like, why don't they have those everywhere? Like, that is the coolest thing ever.
Yeah.
And then later on, I looked at pictures. It looks really cool. It's just like a wall,
Yep.
and there's people behind it making the stuff. And you just put,
Yep.
put your food, you get a
Putting
little
the
sandwich.
sandwiches
And
and whatever in the right, exactly. Yeah,
yeah,
I think they did that. They did it in New York, and I'm pretty sure they had it in right across from the Boston Garden.
yeah. They have those in a lot of the Asian countries, they have a lot of, contactless vending
Yeah.
type of things, not just vending machines, but things like automat style, where a
Hmm.
restaurant you go to has contactless like sort of options for you to get your stuff. And
Right.
a lot of it just has to do with efficiency, more
Hmm.
than anything else, but also like a lot of countries, especially like a lot of Asian countries, there's a lot of street food because, you don't have like big, huge restaurants that a bunch of people sit in.
Right.
You have food that you can take with you or food that you can eat right in front of the store or things like
Hmm.
that. Not a lot of like seating because it's not like they're not large countries you're talking about,
Right. Right.
and they have a
Well, they
lot
don't
more
have a lot
people
of
than country.
room.
Yeah.
There's so many people. It's just not a lot of room. Yeah.
Yeah. But it's really cool though. I would love
Cool.
to,
Cool.
if I
Yeah.
ever get somewhere someday, I would love to experience that because a lot of them are pretty ingenious. And like the vending machines I talked about just scratches the surface to the kinds of cool things that are in vending machines all over
Yeah.
the world.
There was trends that were going with they did have sandwiches in the vending machines, which is sort of, there was popularized for a while. And I think the problem being that, the freshness,
Hmm. Right.
uh,
Well, because you can't really predict. I mean, it has to be, you have to know you're going to have enough business
right,
to invest in something that's perishable like that.
right, exactly.
You
Yeah,
have to do a lot of, I can imagine before you put something like that in place, you'd have to know everybody who's walking by and everybody who would be interested in that. So it makes more sense that there would be non-perishable stuff in most of the vending machines. But
yeah.
that we used to have cool ones that we don't have anymore. Like we don't have as many coffee machines that we used to have, you know.
No, yeah, mainly because it was difficult to make a good cup of coffee.
Yeah.
Some of the I've seen into some of the higher end auto dealerships. They would have high end coffee machines. But the coffee isn't like the greatest, but it was certainly much better than what they used to have, where they would have a pot that would sit there all day long. So
Oh yeah. Oh
yeah.
yeah. Well, I know that the first modern, I mean there's arguments about what the first actual vending machine was, but we're talking like ancient Greece and ancient Egypt. But like when you
Hmm.
get into more modern times, the first modern one like in the let's see in the 1800s
Hmm.
was for gum.
Hmm.
And they used to put it in the rail like in the train stations and it would
Yep.
just sell you like a little pack of gum.
Yeah, I probably had seen one at some point along the way. I know they had the cigarette vending machines,
Yes.
and candy ones too, but they would have the cigarette ones,
Yeah,
which
the cigarette vending machines are actually really cool. Richard actually wants to get one because they're really interactive to use. Because it's not just like put a coin in and something falls down. You have to pull that lever almost like a
right.
pinball machine,
Yep. Hmm.
which is kind of fun, you
Yep.
know.
Yep.
So, I guess in the first century AD in Alexandria, somebody had invented a coin operated machine that dispensed holy water in
Hmm.
temples, and it used a
Okay.
combination of weight and levers to release the water. That-
Okay.
That's pretty
Yeah.
interesting,
Yeah, that is interesting.
Yeah,
Hmm.
so that's vending machines. I had another one for you that I was going to do a couple of weeks ago, and it was for you because it was something that I think you are interested in. So, Jason Bourne,
Hmm.
he was partially named after a real person. I didn't know if you knew that. And the person he was named after is the guy's name was Ansel Bourne,
Oh,
and
okay. Huh.
he was known as one of the most famous amnesiacs in medical history. Did you ever hear
Oh,
about this
wow.
guy?
No, I never heard of it. Yeah.
Yeah,
Huh.
so this was in the 1800s. Ansel Bourne, he was born in 1826. He was a carpenter. in 1857 when suddenly he got the urge to go and visit a chapel. And before this, he was very well known, like in the neighborhood, uh,
Hmm.
being against religion. He was always like, church is nonsense and why you guys always believe that bullshit
Yeah.
and everything like that. He was one of those guys.
Hmm.
And, he doesn't sound like a very super nice guy at that time, but yeah, he
Hmm.
probably like harassed the people who were going to church and things like that. And one day he spoke about passing by a church and thinking to himself that he'd rather be struck blind and deaf than go inside. And according to him, moments later, he was struck blind and deaf and couldn't speak.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Huh.
And so after several days, he like started writing on a slate. He begged somebody to take him to a church. And over the next few weeks, he had spells of blindness and deafness until he was brought back to church. And he considered himself saved and he became an evangelical preacher. So that was one part of his story, right?
Hmm.
And then in 1887, he moved from Providence, Rhode Island to Norristown, Pennsylvania, and started calling himself A.J. Brown. And he became a confectioner out of nowhere. And this was January of 1887 that he did this. He woke up on March 14th, 1887, and he had no idea where he was, and he still thought it was January. And he didn't know who this A.J. Brown was. So
Huh. Wow.
it's like a
S-
fugue state, right?
Yeah. So,
Oh,
so,
go ahead.
so they based the character on him.
Well, I don't know much about Jason Bourne,
Hmm.
but they named him after him, certainly. But
Okay.
I don't
All
know
right.
if there's anything about, aliases and things like that in the
Yeah.
Bourne
The
stuff.
amnesia,
Yeah.
possibly. Yeah.
So he was brought back home by his family, and then he was subsequently studied by a psychologist, William James of Harvard,
Mm.
who found that under hypnosis, he would assume the A.J. Brown, Ansel Bourne personalities like alternatively, and each man knew nothing about the other. And like they had different birthplaces, different backstories. Allegedly, they'd show him a picture
Mm.
of Bourne's wife, and he didn't know who it was while he
Okay.
was being like AJ Brown. And so, the doctors were very interested. Nobody knows for sure whether he just
Huh.
had a fugue state, whether he had what used to be called multiple personality disorder, whether
Yeah.
he had a psychotic break, whether he had a religious break. Nobody knows exactly what happened to him, but he became like really like intensely studied after he disappeared for 3 months or
Mm.
whatever, or 2 months. And I guess because of that became one of the most famous amnesiacs. Isn't that
Wow.
crazy?
That
Yeah.
is crazy. Yeah. Wow.
Yeah. So
That's
I
a
thought,
crazy one. Yeah.
yeah. So I thought you'd find that interesting because of the Bourne connection. But like I said, I
Yeah.
don't know anything about Jason Bourne. I don't know about the storylines or anything. So I don't know
Yeah,
how.
storyline is a little, the amnesia thing is arguable. If I remember correctly, so the amnesia thing was that he was subjected to, all this intensive training and
Oh, yeah.
so that he could assume a personality of somebody different and not, and it was so embedded in him that if he was captured, he wouldn't be able to tell the difference, to break down under torture. He
Oh,
wouldn't be
right.
able to tell what his real name was, and he would have it gave him the ability to take on different names in while he was on a mission,
Oh,
basically.
so that
How
kind of goes to like the whole Manchurian candidate stuff where they were
right.
trying to.
Yeah, there is a good argument that it was based on the Manchurian candidate. Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, that was a fascinating. And now I
Yeah.
watched the original movie first before I read the book.
Hmm.
I didn't like the remake. I didn't think it was as good, but
Yeah.
the original movie was absolutely chilling. And of course it was like there was a lot of like Red Scare stuff in there, but
Hmm.
uh some of it, and that movie was banned
Hmm.
um because of the presidential assassination part that happened at a
Right.
really inconvenient time
Yep.
when the movie
Yep.
was released. But it was pretty fascinating, and also very, very fascinating to see Angela Lansbury as a villain. She
Hmm.
was a good villain. Oh my
Yep.
goodness. She's one of the best villains in movie
Yep.
history, in my opinion. She did such a good job and so creepy.
There's an invention that Edison did that English speakers use every single day.
Oh, what was
Yeah.
it?
Hello.
Oh, he invented hello. I I bet he says he invented hello. Edison.
He
Yeah.
claims that the reason he did the hello was that used hello. He claimed that it was one word that could be heard from 20 to 40 feet with the same clarity.
Really? Yeah, I mean, it was appearing in print the first time in 1827.
Yep.
And people used to say like hello, like HALLO.
Yep.
Yes, Edison had a preference for hello.
Yep.
And speaking of that, you know Alexander Graham Bell's suggestion for how people should answer the phone. Did you ever hear that one?
No, he said was no, but
Yeah. Mushy mushy. Yeah, so yeah, so when Alexander Graham Bell invented the telephone, his suggestion was that when you pick up the phone, you say ahoy hoy,
ahoy,
ahoy hoy, which
ahoy.
ahoy hoy, because he felt that that was the best way of answering the phone, ahoy. And the funny thing about that is that, like that just went completely in the trash bucket, right?
Yeah, yeah.
But and I don't know if you ever have, but did you ever watch The Simpsons back in the day?
No, I don't think I ever did. No, no.
So The Simpsons been around for a long time, but there was a character in The Simpsons, and he was this like super rich, super old like guy. His name
Mhm.
was Mr. Burns, right?
Okay.
And there were a lot of jokes about him being like, he's like basically like William Randolph Hearst, kind of,
Okay.
and he was like very decrepit and old and very frail,
Mm.
and you never knew exactly how old he was. But one of the in jokes about hinting at how old he was whenever he answered the phone, he said ahoy hoy.
Ahoy, hoy. Okay.
And there was no explanation for it, but if you knew the Alexander
Uh,
Graham Bell reference, you'd
so
be like,
it was an homage. Yeah.
yeah,
Okay.
basically the joke
Yeah.
is that he's so old that he's using the original answering of the telephone.
Yeah. Okay.
Because he was around when the telephone was invented. That's kind of the joke.
Another random sort of thing is we see movies, where they would have the ships that would be shooting cannonballs at different at each other,
Oh yeah.
and the most sailors in the 18th century battles were killed by wooden splinters.
Yes.
You know, because the ships were old and rotted, and when the balls hit the ship, it would just splinter all over the place. And I think in as a way to correct that, they would make the ships of different wood material that didn't splinter. Because
Yeah.
that was a big deal.
Well, and
Uh,
they knew that that was a big reason why
mhm.
you would get killed, and when they were using cannons as weapons, they didn't think, I'm going to hit this guy with a cannon. They're going to
Right.
think, number one, you're going to put a hole in the ship, but number two, like all that chaos that's going around all the shrapnel's going to get you. And
Yep.
also, like, even though they didn't have germ theory yet,
Yep.
the same with muskets.
Yep.
Like if you get shot with a musket, it's really more it's I mean, it's bad to get shot with a musket ball, but it's not
Mhm.
the musket ball that does the most damage to you, especially if it doesn't go very far in. You've got pieces of your clothing and your skin and everything
Yep.
else that was in the world before it
Mhm.
got into you,
Yep.
all over that musket ball.
Yeah,
And it's
and that their hygiene wasn't that great back then. So
no, especially if you're fighting a war like the Revolutionary War,
yeah,
uh those guys are in the dirt,
yeah,
and they're
oh yeah,
crawling around and uh
yeah,
you know, all
yeah.
that kind of good
So
stuff.
the idea that you eat a peck of dirt before you die is not a valid thing to say.
I mean, honestly, I think that's something that mothers say so they don't have to pick
Yep.
their kid up out of the dirt when they,
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
that and yeah, you're fine. You're
Yeah,
fine.
that's okay. Shake it off.
Yeah, exactly. So they didn't have to run over and interrupt their cigarette to
Yeah, yeah.
pick you up and make you feel better.
Yeah, was it there's a commercial where this kid's yelling from upstairs that he hurt himself, and the mother's cuddling up with a cat or something. And and he says, "Yeah, but I'm bleeding all over the place." Well, take a second bandage, you know.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, that
Anyway.
just goes to all those memes of like my generation, how we were never allowed inside the house and we drank from the hose and we weren't allowed to come in unless we had lost a limb or bleeding to
Yeah.
death. We had to go to school unless our arm fell off.
Well, yeah, that's was that Monty Python thing with the knight, you know.
Yeah,
So
yeah, exactly. Exactly. Oh, I thought you were going to talk about the other Monty Python thing with like the guys trying to one up each other about how bad their childhood was. Do you remember
oh
that
yeah,
sketch?
no, I
I had to live like we lived in cardboard box in middle of the road. Oh, at
yeah,
least you had a box.
yeah, yeah,
Every day we had to wake up at 4 o'clock in the morning and clean out the cardboard box before we all went for our dinner of one piece of bread between 18 of us. And the
yeah,
one guy
yeah,
finally was like, I had to wake up at 5 o'clock in the afternoon, 6 hours before I went to bed.
yeah, yeah. And you had bread, you know, so
Yeah, exactly. And the kids today, they just won't understand. That was a good sketch.
yeah,
I like that
yeah,
sketch.
yeah.
Um, okay. So I have one that I went on kind of a crazy rabbit hole with. And it started with a banana.
Okay.
All right. So I tried the fact that I got this from was in my QI book, and it said a single banana was auctioned in London in 1942 for the equivalent of 95 pounds. And I think that would have been like the 2019 equivalent because I think that's when the book came out.
Mhm.
I couldn't find a single reference to that auction. But what I did find was a lot of stuff about bananas. And I already knew some of this, and you might have already known some of this too. But so the bananas that we eat today,
Mhm.
uh, they're called the Cavendish, and they taste really, really different from the bananas that we used to eat up until the 50s. So you were little, but I
Mhm.
don't know if you ate one of these bananas. They were called Gros Michel, Gros Gros Michel, Michel, or Big Mike.
Right. Okay.
And they were larger bananas, but they were also like 10 times sweeter, and they were like a creamier texture and consistency, and they apparently they tasted so much better. And those were the bananas that everybody ate like before the late 40s and early 50s. But there was a disease of the crops called Panama disease, and it wiped out like almost all of those bananas. And of course, they were freaking out because by
Mm.
that time, bananas were selling all over the world.
Yep. Yep.
And so they did some hybridization and they came up with the Cavendish, which was it wasn't susceptible to the Panama disease. And that's the one we're eating now. And I read somewhere that the Cavendish is in danger of certain diseases and funguses. So we might have to switch again to something else.
Oh, okay. Mm.
But the cool thing about the Gros Michel banana, they still grows in some areas, but it's like very small now. Like they couldn't feed the world with them anymore.
Mhm.
Um, so the talked about the taste. The reason it tastes that way is because it has a higher concentration of isoamyl acetate, which is the chemical that they use to make banana flavoring. Okay.
Okay.
Which is why if you eat something that's banana flavored, like artificially banana flavored,
Right.
to somebody like me, it doesn't taste like bananas.
Hmm.
But to somebody of maybe like your parents' generation or maybe your generation, but a few years older, old enough to remember, that would be like, yeah, that's what a banana tastes like. So if you eat banana candy, it doesn't really taste like bananas, but those Gros Michel bananas used to taste like banana candy, which
Wow.
is really cool. Yeah.
Yeah, that is cool.
Yeah, I think that's really neat. Um,
Yeah.
and then my last fact about bananas was that there was a concept art piece, and I think it was 2019, called Comedian. It was
Hmm.
by Maurizio Catalan. And it was basically consisted of a banana duct taped to the gallery wall. And there were three made in this series. And two of them were sold in 2019 for $120,000 each. And one was sold for 150,000. And in 2024, number two of the limited edition was bought by cryptocurrency entrepreneur Justin Sun for $6.2 million. And after he bought it, he ate it on stage.
You know, I think there's a commercial now
Yeah.
where they have the guy who played Thor
Yeah.
and the guy that played the lead in the Guardians of the Galaxy,
Yeah.
and they're in this art gallery, and one of them was hungry, so they ate this banana that was on the wall.
Yeah. And that's a reference to the,
That's a
yeah.
reference to it, you know. So
Yes. Exactly. And the guy who ate the banana, he compared it to crypto, and he said the real value is in the concept itself.
yeah,
Like,
yeah,
okay, buddy, you just spent $6.5 million to eat a banana, but
that's right. Okay.
you try to justify it any way that you can. Um, so from bananas, I went to pineapples, and
Oh, okay.
you may know about pineapples. Pineapples have a dark history. I'm not going to go into the dark history of
Hmm.
pineapples because, like, that whole thing about Dole
Yeah.
in Hawaii, it's pretty bad. His company, in a lot of ways, led to Hawaii no longer being a sovereign nation, becoming a
Yeah.
state, all that stuff. It's yikes. But but pineapples originated in South America, and colonization and trade going back to the 1700s led to pineapples being one of the desired exports to Europe. But of course, a voyage from South America to Europe takes a long time. Pineapples don't last forever. So they were very rare, and it was considered
Hmm.
a delicacy. And it was customary to pay ridiculous amounts for a pineapple. And they were even rented out to wealthy families. Like, you could rent a pineapple to put on display in your home when company comes over, and then you have to return it.
Okay.
And they never ate them because you wouldn't just spend the equivalent of like $1 million for a pineapple and then just eat it. So you have to just like display it until it starts to rot.
Yeah.
Um, and a lot of aristocratic European families would display pineapples on a dining table to show their wealth.
Hmm.
And this is thought to be the origin of the pineapple as a symbol of hospitality. You know how you have like
Okay. Yep. All right.
pineapples on like door knockers and things like
Hmm.
that, like
Yes. Right.
in hotels and all that kind of stuff. So,
Hmm.
and that's because of pineapples being so rare and so expensive and so trendy that they were really just used as display, and it was considered very hospitable of a host to allow you to be in their home around your pineapple, I guess.
Wow.
I guess. And then this I learned a few months ago. I never knew this, but there's a very similar story to that with celery.
Oh,
So
really?
yeah, so when celery first started being cultivated, I've never grown celery, but I've grown like lettuce, and
Hmm.
it has a very short growing season, right? When
Yep.
you're growing lettuce, and it has to have very specific soil conditions, and it can only
Hmm.
grow. So celery was really hard to grow, like in the 1800s. And so you could only grow it in very limited places. So celery became this like highly prized and
Hmm.
highly desired piece of produce that only rich people would have.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
And it became
Wow.
so, yeah, and it became such a trend in the 1800s that they started making these vases, and they're like one of those long vases that you would
Hmm.
do for a flower arrangement, and they were specifically called celery vases. And they were to display your celery, and they were like crystal vases, or sometimes they were metal and things like that, but mostly crystal, and very expensive. They were given as wedding gifts, and they'd be engraved with the couple's name,
Yeah.
and you could display your stalks of celery on your dining room table and not eat them. And of course, later, if you were incredibly rich, you would integrate the celery into your dishes, which was considered like, oh my goodness, we're eating celery. You know, can you imagine? Oh, wow, the menu on this place, it's celery. It's amazing. And then of course, like, they figured out how to like grow it easier. And then it
Hmm.
became like poor people food. So the popularity of celery vases kind of went down. But celery vases do have a value today because of the history of them. And now, of course, celery is like an afterthought. But that's, for a long time, it was on all the menus of all the shishi restaurants,
Oh, wow. Hmm.
celery. And peanut butter was the same kind of thing. So peanut butter in the late 1800s, it wasn't common. Do you remember we talked about John Harvey Kellogg?
Yeah. Yes. Hmm.
Well, one of his wacky things was, of course, he talked about digestion. He talked about you have to eat bland foods, but he also talked about it was bad for you to eat foods you had to chew a lot because the more you chew, and it's difficult to chew, the more excited your system becomes. And that's bad because you can't have excitement in your system. So he was looking for a protein substitute that was like smooth and creamy that people could eat instead of like meat because he was against meat anyway. And he
Oh,
was,
okay.
and it was something that he could, people could eat without chewing very much. And so he actually used boiled peanuts and turned them into a paste, and then they ate that. And because his places that he had, what were they? They were like, sort of spas for the wealthy.
Mhm. Yeah.
Those places were so expensive to go to. Only the very rich and elite went to them. And
Mhm.
so when those kinds of things were served on the menu, peanut butter and graham crackers and all this kind of stuff,
Mhm.
like they became the kind of foods that only rich people had. And then, of course, rich people who weren't living in the sort of sanatoriums would serve them at their own dinners too. So then peanut butter became one of those things that that was served only in very wealthy households.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Mm.
And then in the 1900s, of course, you had like more mass production happening. So
Mhm.
they learned
Yeah.
how to like mass produce peanut butter. And that was around the time that the traveling salesman used to go door to door with like the peanut grinder
Mhm.
and like grind peanuts in front of the housewife. And look, you can make your own peanut butter. And they were so
Uh,
impressed that they bought the peanut grinder. Um,
so when we have a peanut butter and jelly sandwich, we're
yeah,
really aristocrats.
we're aristocrats, especially if it's like, what if you had a peanut butter and banana sandwich
Oh man, you'd be just well, yeah,
and it was like a $6.5 million banana?
yeah. You'd be entitled to a big tax break too. So
Exactly, exactly. I don't know anything about like the value of fluff in the 1800s, but I'm
no, I
sure.
don't know.
But yeah, so that was my little rabbit hole about like foods that were,
Oh, okay. Well, I
yeah.
got what maybe one last thing is
Yeah.
like for food thing is true or false?
Mm.
The creation of the popular soft drink Fanta dates
Ah,
back to World War One.
yes, it's a Nazi thing.
It's a Nazi thing.
It
Yes.
is.
Yes, it was
Yes.
invented by Nazi Germany because the US had embargoed the Germans from importing Coca-Cola.
Yes,
So they developed Fanta as a an alternative. How
that's
about that?
correct.
Yeah,
That's
cool.
correct. There's a lot of companies that came about because of Nazi Germany that we
Mm.
still enjoy today,
Mhm.
like Hugo Boss and IBM and Volkswagen.
Yeah, I know. Hey,
I know.
it's fun. I had one last thing about food is like true or
Yeah.
false, artificial sweeteners, saccharin,
Mm.
cyclamate, and aspartame were all
Aspartame.
invented by mistake.
Oh, I know at least one of them was invented by mistake because there's a story of the guy who was working with this chemical,
Hmm.
and these scientists were so friggin' gross back in the day. He had it all over his hands.
And he licked his fingers.
Well, he just like eat his lunch and he's like, wow, everything tastes so sweet. Like,
Yeah,
wash your hands. What is wrong
that's
with you?
right.
You've got
That's right.
chemicals.
It's like, man, that's like dumb. So,
Right. You got
yeah,
chemicals all. Hi, I'm a scientist. I work with chemicals all day. I'm gonna go home, not
yeah,
wash my hands and eat dinner. Why
yeah.
is my dinner so? What if you're working with arsenic and cyanide and shit?
Well, it tastes like walnuts. So what is it? Almonds. Yeah.
Yeah, bitter almonds.
Yeah.
Well, what's funny? They have a new documentary. I think it's on Netflix about the Tylenol murders. You know about the
Hmm.
Tylenol murders, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And it has a lot more information than I ever knew. It's pretty good actually, but
Yeah.
it's a multi-part series.
Yeah.
So I think I haven't finished watching it, but it kind of sounds like they're trying to lean towards the fact that Johnson and Johnson might have had something actually to do with it. But there's one part that I never heard about was that right before the Tylenol murders,
Hmm.
this police officer was at like Howard Johnson's at a truck stop, and he sees this like pile of Tylenol pills with powder all over the ground. And he's like, "Oh, who did that? Somebody made a big mess." And he picks it up and he's putting it in his hand. He's like, "Oh, it's powder everywhere. Oh, goodness gracious." Brushes his hands off and then goes into Hojo's and eats with his friend. And while he's eating, his arm starts tingling he starts feeling lousy and his arm swells up and he starts to get really sick and they have to take him to the hospital and he had cyanide poisoning.
Oh, Jesus. Wow.
Yeah. And I'm like, first of all, I'm thinking, oh, there you go. It was on a distribution truck and somebody was messing with the stuff. Somebody
Right.
who worked in distribution was maybe the one who did the Tylenol murders, right? That's
Hmm.
an interesting little piece. But then the second thing I was thinking is, what is this cop thinking? This wasn't even that long ago.
Yeah.
That was what? That was 1980. No. Was that the
I don't
80s or
know.
the 70s?
70. Well, I think more the 80s.
I think it was 81 or 82.
Yeah.
So really, we're talking modern times. Police officer sees a bunch of powder laying
Yeah.
on the ground. His partner says it's probably a drug thing. He just brushes off his hands, goes in and gets a burger at the Hojo's. You're not going to wash your hands. What if it was a drug thing? Dude.
Yeah, I know. Yeah.
No,
Yeah.
you should
Crazy.
wash your hands. It,
Okay.
I don't
Oh.
know. I don't know what to tell you.
Mm. Yeah.
But anyway, so yeah, so that's we did it again. We got real random with it.
Yeah. Oh,
Um
yeah, for sure. Definitely. So,
yeah, so folks, let us know what you think. You should send us an email at mochiverse@gmail.com, MOCCIAVERSE @gmail.com. Go visit us on Apple Podcasts and give us a 5-star rating and subscribe to us. Uh, and let us know if you want to have more of these random stories or if you want us to focus on some other things. I don't know. Like I might come back from my vacation with some haunted tales from Savannah. What do you think?
okay. Yeah, could be. Yeah.
Could
Never
be. I'll
know.
see what happens. I might get some
Yeah.
material.
Yeah.
So I guess before the haunting that I'll give you in a couple of weeks, I guess you're gonna haunt me with some dad jokes.
Got it.
All right.
Listen, all gangsters never die. They just go into the underworld.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, old guitarists never die. They just become unstrung.
Yeah.
Old postal employees never die. They just lose their zip and feel out of sorts.
Oh, I like that one. That's
Yeah,
clever.
yeah. Old ministers never die. They just get put out. The pastor. Sorry.
That's a good one. And that one physically hurt you. I like
Yeah, it
that.
did. Old beekeepers never die. They just buzz off.
Yeah,
You
yeah.
know, old electricians never die. They just lose contact.
Oh, good, good,
That's
good.
it. Yeah, old horticulturists never die. They just go to pot.
Yeah.
Old owls never die. They just don't give a hoot.
Oh, geez.
Old artists never die. They just get the brush off. And you know that lines have so much in common. It's a shame they never meet.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I told my wife to embrace her mistakes. So she gave me a hug.
Aw, so nice.
Yeah.
Those are
Okay.
good.
Okay.
Those are
Yeah.
good ones.
Yeah.
All right, folks. We'll see you in a couple of weeks. Bye.
Yes. And y'all have a good vacation. Yeah.
Yeah, I'll try.
Yeah.
All right.
Daddy wasn't finding a pow wow. Daddy wasn't finding a pow wow. I've got a little cat. I'm very fond of that. I'd rather have a big bow wow.
Hey, you moved my mic. Look at it's just-
The cat moved him out. There you go. No
Yeah.
wonder all of a sudden you're talking louder.
Yeah.
So, yeah.